Mill DNA tested our daughter without our consent. Turns out my husband is not the father. My 45F husband 48M and I have been together for 25 years. We have 3 kids F8, M15, and F17. My husband and I had a lot of trouble conceiving our daughter. We went through several years with no luck and had seen a fertility doctor who had prescribed some medication to help with ovulation. We couldn't afford IVF, so we were going to try this last thing and then look into adoption. Well, long story short, I was SA'd during a burglary while my husband was out with his brother. It was right when I was to be ovulating. At the hospital I took EC even though I knew it would undo all the hard work, medication, and mean we wouldn't be able to have a baby of our own, but I couldn't risk getting pregnant with my words baby. Well, after a few months I've been feeling off, sick, down. I figured I was just depressed after the SA and I hadn't been eating, but I soon found out I was pregnant. We were so excited until I went to my appointment and found out I was 15 weeks instead of the 5 or 6 weeks I thought I was. I had been having really irregular spotting/bleeding since the EC, so didn't even imagine I was that far along. My husband and I were devastated because that meant there was so much uncertainty surrounding paternity. We had our ultrasound and as soon as we saw the baby on the screen I knew I couldn't have an abortion and my husband didn't want to either. We talked and went back and forth about adoption and if the baby didn't end up being his or what we would do, and he said he didn't care about paternity, we just wouldn't find out. We decided to wait until our child was older to tell them and they could decide if they wanted to find out themselves. I will also note at this point my case was unsolved but had been linked to other SAs murders at the time. A few years ago my rapist was caught and a year ago finally sentenced. At the hearing I spoke and my daughter and son knew about it, but I didn't go into details. But they knew I was attacked but only knew it was before they were born. Last Christmas my mill bought my daughter and only my daughter a 23andMe for Christmas. I thought it was extremely weird but didn't think too much of it. Thinking back I don't know why I didn't see it for what it was. My daughter was equally confused and asked if I wanted to do it instead. I'm adopted. I said sure and just gave my daughter an Amazon gift card for the price of the test. My daughter brought it to my attention that my mill has been overly critical of my daughter in the last few months, commenting on her differences. Saying things like I wonder where those eyes came from, hair, height. She even said to my daughter I wonder why you're so skinny. My daughter looks exactly like me, the same eyes color, same hair color and texture, but she is quite a bit taller than me. I'm 5 feet 8 inches, she's 6 feet. I'm on the heavier side, so is my husband, and my daughter is extremely thin but she is also an athlete. I've never had any reason to believe from looks alone that she is not my husband's daughter. After my daughter brought it to my attention how my mill was acting, I spoke with her and she said oh she's just being sensitive. This was a couple months ago. A couple nights ago my mill invited my husband and I out for dinner and told us to leave the kids at home because she had something important to discuss with us. We did. We went to a restaurant, we're eating and my mill hands me and my husband 2 separate envelopes. My husband and I both look in the envelope and they are a DNA comparison results. I asked my mill what it was and she said the proof that you're the garbage I always knew you were. I was extremely confused. I asked whose DNA she compared and as I said that I just knew, she said my husband and my daughter. My husband looked at me and he looked so hurt and lost. I'll never get that image out of my head as long as I live. I called her a heartless CNT and my husband and I left. I blocked her number from mine and my kids' phones, but figured my husband needed to make that decision on his own. My husband told me last night my mill called him and he stopped by after work at her house. She was telling my husband she's known for a while and suspected for a very long time and that she wasn't sure how to approach the topic with him. My husband asked how she knew that. She said she overheard my bill talking to his wife and heard our daughter may not be his. My mill took that to mean that I cheated, so she did a DNA test. Last year around the hearing my husband got drunk and ended up mentioning the hearing and some details to my bill. Apparently that night while sleeping he said I couldn't protect her and what if she's not mine. My husband was extremely drunk and did not remember doing this. My mother-in-law does not know that I was sad, but she does know there was a break-in and I was attacked. She kept trying to convince my husband to leave me. My husband told her what she did was unforgivable and that he is going to cut her off. My husband is inconsolable. He's so upset he told his mother to fuck off and then told her that my attack was actually an SA and that's who our daughter's biological father. It still makes me sick to say that. Well, she tried to apologize, but my husband told her he can't forgive her and not to contact any of us. I told everyone my mill DNA tested our daughter and we were done with her. I have 7 siblings, 5 think I'm in the right, the other 2 and my bill can't believe Mill did that, but understands why, because she didn't have the entire story and assumed I wasn't being truthful to my husband. But even if I wasn't, I can't imagine being a parent so concerned with my child's relationship that I would go to those lengths to meddle. Update. First, thank you for all your support and a big F off to all the creeps and holes. To answer the most common questions, yes, we are no contact with my mill. know. I haven't talked to her since the dinner and my husband hasn't spoken to her since a couple days after that. She knows I was roped, and attempted to apologize to my husband when he last spoke to her, but he basically told her to F off and he couldn't forgive her. We also had a good relationship up until this point, or so I thought. We hung out and did stuff together. I was just really hurtful that she told me at dinner when I asked what the envelope was, that it's proof that you're the trash I always knew you were. Also, my answers and descriptions of what took place are intentionally vague, due to the amount of attention this got, and the fact someone commented this is now on TikTok. I don't want a single person to know mine or my family's true identity and try to out my daughter's biology to my rapist or his family. If my daughter desires to do that in the future, I want that decision to be wholly hers and not have another decision about her future to be made for her against her will. I'll suffice it to say that he is in prison for life without parole. And I am not the only person he did this to. He also murdered at least one other victim. There are very few articles about this trial because it was a closed trial, and although none of the victims interviewed or are mentioned by name, they do use initials. There is also a slew of other charges he had brought against him as well. People want to know why or how I could have kept a baby knowing the possibility of the rapist being the father. And the answer is that even if I had known definitively that he was the father, my decision probably wouldn't have been different. She is as much a part of me biologically speaking as she is him. And after seeing her move around, I didn't desire an abortion, although it would have been nearly impossible for me to get one anyway where I lived. Although she was conceived in violence, she was raised in love, understanding, and acceptance. She is much more mine and my husband than my rapist's. Also, he did was contribute DNA to her, nothing else. He's had no influence or part in her life and likely never will. I know DNA doesn't mean anything in the sense of who she is, but that doesn't diminish the devastation and anger I feel knowing he is responsible for any part of her. I'm honestly not sure why my husband and I were so blindsided, but I feel like you can convince yourself of anything given the right circumstances. Initially, we did feel it was likely the rapist because of the year we went without conceiving, but when I got pregnant with my son pretty soon after my daughter, I know I convinced myself that not only was it a possibility, it was the only likely scenario. It's also not lost on me that the decision to keep her isn't something many people agree with, apparently according to this post, but I know I made the right decision because my daughter is the most amazing girl and I couldn't imagine my life without her. My daughter is doing well in her relationship with myself, and my husband hasn't changed at all. If anything, her relationship with my husband is much better. She makes an effort to spend more time with him and they have many shared interests. My daughter said she isn't upset I didn't tell her. She's upset she had to find out when she wasn't truly ready, and she happy I was able to share such a vulnerable, horrible event with her. My son now knows the specifics and my youngest knows my daughter has a different dad, but not about my rape. People also seem to be concerned with her genetics and how it affects her future health. She already had neonatal testing for genetic disorders. I am not a carrier of any autosomal recessive disorders, and she has had genetic testing for autosomal dominant ones and was negative. She also has had genetic testing for several different forms of cancer because of my biological family history. Anything else couldn't affect her until adulthood, and they are all almost heavily influenced by lifestyle, so they wouldn't be a concern until she's much older. I'm not sure what else to say, so I'll just once again reiterate how thankful I am for all the support. Edit. For clarity and context, sorry this was a rant, I didn't go into a lot of specifics like I did in my initial posts. Here is the link. Also, I didn't word it very well, but we retested my daughter and husband because they never willingly gave my Mill a sample and we didn't want to ask her how she got the DNA. Also, my husband and I have been in therapy on/off since this happened 18 years ago. And my kids have been in therapy since they were in middle school. I make them go 4x a year and they can go more often if they desire. When this initially happened, I started having my daughter go weekly and now she goes every other. Update 2. I'm so angry I don't know what to do now that I have confirmation. She is dead to me. Just confirmed my daughter isn't my husband's and I'm devastated. A couple months ago my Mill unknowingly DNA tested our daughter cause she didn't believe she was my husband's. To make a long story short, around the time of conception of my daughter I was SA'd during a home invasion. This was after several years of trying for a baby. I took EC at the hospital and was depressed and stressed after. Didn't realize I was pregnant until I was 15 weeks. My husband and I decided regardless we were going to keep the baby. After she was born we decided we didn't want to find out. I felt like no, absolutely she wasn't my husband would change how she was treated. My husband's family didn't know her paternity was in question, and they didn't know I was SA'd. Well, a couple months ago my Mill invited my husband and I out to dinner. She blindsides both of us by handing us envelopes with DNA results in them and basically says she always knew I was a liar and cheater and is trying to tell my husband to leave with her. My husband was devastated when he realized our daughter isn't his. I've never seen him look more hurt. We had planned to tell my daughter when she was older that there was a question of her paternity and allow her to DNA testing if she wished, but instead I had to tell my 17-year-old the whole story of how I was assaulted and what her grandmother did. We didn't really know how my mill did the DNA test, so we decided to get another test done. I got the confirmation this morning that my daughter and my husband have zero biological relationship. I'm so angry and pissed. We always knew this was a possibility, but I didn't think so a second it could happen. She looks so much like her siblings and me. Thank God she has no resemblance to the artist. I immediately made her start seeing her therapist more regularly, and she seems to be doing rather well despite everything. Thankfully. Now story 2. I screamed at my pregnant cell and told my husband to choose me or her. I know this sounds wrong, but please hear me out. I'm currently typing this all up while my husband's entire family is sitting downstairs. So, I 29F, have been married to my husband for 8 years. About 2 months ago I had my third miscarriage, 31 weeks. I won't be talking about it because it makes me feel so depressed, but you'll need to remember this. About 4 months ago, my sister-in-law, 20, came crying at our doorstep telling us she's pregnant and her boyfriend didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy, and had nowhere to go. My husband and I openly took her in, welcomed her into our home with open arms. For the first few weeks, it was really hard for her, understandably. I sat with her for hours, holding her when she cried, binging our favorite TV shows, eating so much ice cream we quite literally fell into a coma. It was really bonding for us, so I thought, here's where it starts going downhill. I take pride in my neat, clean home. My sister-in-law on the other hand did not. She would leave her clothes all around the house, leave her dirty dishes wherever, even went as far in leaving her sex toys on our living room table. I tried to talk to her directly before I talked to my husband. She immediately started crying and told me she'd try to be cleaner. I hugged her, told her it was okay, but this is a clear boundary for me. She told me it wouldn't happen again. But it only got worse. She told me I was expected to do her laundry, dishes, and clean her room daily because she's the pregnant one. Well, I do understand how hard it is being pregnant. I just couldn't allow feeling like a maid in my own home. Disclaimer, I bought this house, not my husband. It was all me, not to mention my recent loss of my child. So, I told my husband, but what he told me shocked me. His exact words were, "Honey, she's going through a lot right now, we really should be helping her out. Plus, it might make you feel better, to take care of someone who's pregnant." I was pissed to say the least. Make me feel better? She's going through a lot? We need to help her? Letting her stay with us wasn't enough? While I don't want to invalidate her pain, my husband and I were also going through our own problems. Anyways, we moved on. I did my best to maintain work and the household chores. My husband works 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. so he isn't around to help much. I work full-time from home, so it's been super stressful. When I even try to ask for help from my sister-in-law, she always makes an excuse. Even if she's just watching TV. The one thing that pushed me over the edge was I went out to buy my one food that I have actually enjoyed eating after my miscarriage. I wrote my name on it and directly asked my sister-in-law to not eat it. Well, I went to go to my fridge to get it, and you'll never guess. She freaking ate it. Now you may think it's just food. I buy all the groceries, basically pay all the bills. I don't mind people having some of my food, but the one thing I ask to not be touched, gets touched. I told my husband and of course he rubbed it into my face that she's pregnant. I need to be less selfish, and life is about sacrifices. I was so upset I told him I felt like him and her were the horrible roommates people talk about on Reddit. He didn't take that well, lol. Which leads us to my title. My sister-in-law planned a random baby shower party thing, at my house. I personally didn't know if I could even be home when this was happening. I felt so hurt that she wouldn't talk to me knowing everything that has happened and that she would just invite random strangers into another person's home before asking. My husband urged me to go, told him it would permanently affect mine and her relationship. So, I told him I'd go. About halfway through the party my husband and SIL announced that they wanted to show the nursery to everyone. I was confused. Nursery? She was staying that long? What room did she turn into a nursery? They told everyone to head upstairs. That's when it hit me. They were talking about my nursery, for my baby I had just lost. A wave of emotions hit me when I saw everyone in my baby's nursery telling her what a good job they did setting it up. My setup. For my baby, that my body failed to give me. I just lost it. I started sobbing, then that sadness turned into pure rage. I started yelling at my sister-in-law, telling her she's the foulest human for putting me through everything she has for the last few months. Making me feel like I was a maid, or an object for her convenience. Through choked up tears I turned to my husband whose jaw was on the floor. I turned my head to see his entire family just staring at me. I lost it again. Yelling, I looked at my sister-in-law telling her, how dare she use my nursery, for my baby, how dare she think she has the right. What she told me, made me fall to my knees sobbing. It's not my fault you couldn't produce a child, Why let this go to waste? You're so selfish. My husband tried to pick me up off the floor, but I yelled again, standing to my knees, which were now shaking. I told him, pick. A dumbfound look on his face. I yelled again, pick, me or her. He couldn't even muster up anything to say. I just looked at him, pure butyrol. I pushed past the crowd of family and ran straight up here to type this out. Even if no one sees this, at least it's helped me let these emotions out. Now's the point where I ask, am I the a-hole? Update, sorry for any typos or misspelt words. I'm not quite sure if this is the proper way to do an update, but hopefully everyone can see it. First, I just want to address a few comments. You can skip this part if you don't care, lol. I know I had a stillborn. The only reason I say miscarriage is because that is what my obstetrician told me was happening. Second off, some people have been saying this story is fake because of the way I described the argument. Falling to my knees, pure betrayal. Yes, I figured out I spelt it wrong. I can assure you it is not. I cannot make anyone believe me, but this is my life, so you can either think it's fake or not. Here's the update everyone's been asking for. Buckled up, it's a long one. After posting my story on Reddit, I sat on my bed, wiping my tears and telling myself I will not take this disrespect. I walked downstairs, shutting my nursery door on the way. I was greeted with everyone comforting my sister-in-law. I kindly asked everyone besides my sister-in-law and husband to respectfully get the fuck out of my house. After all the dirty looks and shaming, it was just my husband, sister-in-law and myself. They sat themselves on the couch, not saying anything. I sat with them. The silence felt like forever. None of us had anything to say. I knew I'd have to start the conversation. I looked at my husband and said, "Did you decide?" He looked at me, just staring. I asked again in a firm tone this time. He ended up mumbling some sort of insult and I couldn't really make out what he said. Something with bitchy. I stood up and told them both to get out. Then they wanted to talk, telling me this is all a misunderstanding, they're sorry, blah blah blah. I grabbed a backpack from my shoe closet and told them to pack their shit. My sister-in-law told me I couldn't just make her leave, and I was a horrible person. I laughed in her face and told her this is my house, and I can do whatever I wanted. My husband stood next to me and told her it was only for a little while. I turned to him and said, "Oh, you too, get out." He got all mad and told me we were a married couple and that this isn't how marriage works. I told him, no it is not. Marriage is where two people support each other, and not treat their wife like shit. They both ended up leaving after many insults towards me. Oh, but wait, it's not over. This morning as I was getting ready for a Zoom meeting with a few other coworkers, when my husband showed up. I let him in, telling him to get whatever he needed and to go because I had to work. He started apologizing and telling me he wants to make it right. I told him I just need time away from him. Then he threw in my face, "Well, it's not my fault you lost our children. Maybe this would have never happened." My sister was right, you are selfish. I have never ever made my husband feel like he cannot grieve with me over this, never made him feel less than because of his pain. I turned around and slapped him in the face. I never condone violence, and I'm very upset I would ever do that to another human, but I just couldn't deal with this. He took a step back and then threw all of my makeup on the floor, which I get, but then he started breaking all of my decor in my bathroom. I yelled at him to stop and that I was sorry, but he just kept going. Even going as far as punching a hole in my bathroom wall. It was like I was seeing all of his bottled up emotions from our children's death come out. But he went too far when he tried to grab me, yelling in my face. I kicked him off and told him to get the fuck out. He walked out of the bathroom, and I watched him break a few more items as he left. The second he left I had a panic attack, looking at the mess he made, to even just seeing how much he hid his pain. I called my mother and told her everything that has been happening. I don't talk to my family much due to some past trauma with them. She told me she was on her way. The second she got here, I just broke down and she held me. Then she stood up and started taking pictures of everything he broke. I asked her what she was doing, and she turned to me and said, "We're suing this POS." I honestly didn't even argue. I was so hurt by everything my husband did to me. My mom packed up my computer and I grabbed a few outfits. My mom and I drove to a hotel, and she insisted on staying with me. While I finished up work, my mom called a locksmith and my attorney. I will be divorcing him as well. So, there it is, here's the update everyone has been waiting for. I feel guilty for just giving up on my husband and 8 years of our marriage, but it's time for a divorce. I can't live like this, and neither can my husband. I wish I could say we moved on, forgave each other, and I got to see my sister-in-law have her baby. But that's not reality. If anything else happens, I will let you all know. Thank you, guys, for the support and help with this situation.